Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of We Have the Science, where we get a chance to sit down and talk with scientists, engineers, communicators, and educators about their respective fields. I'm Brian from the BrainBug YouTube channel, where we use insects, spiders, and other arthropods as a stepping stone into the world of science.
I guess that's me. I'm
Yeah,
Momma.
that's you.
Sorry. I'm Amanda. I'm a climate scientist. I have my channel. We talk about secular stuff. We talk about science.
All right, and today we actually have a very special guest. We have Mr. PZ Myers. He's a biologist, educator, activist, blogger, YouTuber, and science communicator. Welcome to the show here, PZ. I'm glad you could join us today. Why don't you tell the people who aren't familiar with you a little bit about yourself?
You mean there are people who are not familiar with me? What are you implying? Let's see. What do you need to know about? I am a professor at Small University in Minnesota. So it's a small liberal arts college where I teach biology. My current obsession is spiders. So I'm doing lots of work with spiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make our friend Dave love you very much because he loves spiders.
Oh, well, doesn't everybody?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, this guy actually does. I mean, I do. Dave does not, but uh, I know that you are your school. You are working and doing classes still. Is that correct?
Well, it's complicated. Classes have started. We went with a hybrid model where faculty could opt in to do various things, whether in person or online. And I'm teaching a class where we were going to be teaching lectures online and labs in person. And it's gradually evolving away from that as we get more and more scared. So, yeah, so we're still working on it. It may end up it will be totally online.
Well, that's schools in general right now. It seems to be the theme of this starting school year. Even my all my kids from I got kids from elementary through high school. 4 days they made it in before, and it's not a big school. I told you beforehand. I'm from a pretty small town, and four cases right when they opened up. So have you had any cases that? I mean, I know you said you're getting more scared, but
Yeah, we've got a well, for a long time, this where I am at Stevens County, it's a very rural, and there were almost no cases at all reported around here. And now that classes have opened up, it's starting to climb. And in our little county of 10,000, I think we've got 54 cases now. And I've had a couple of students tell me that they got exposed and that they are quarantined. This is one of the motivations behind going to entirely online for the labs is we got these students who can't come to class. So what do? Well, you got to accommodate them.
They actually had teachers in our school district here that were positive before they stopped school in March. And this time around, they came back. I have a son who's 16, and they said, well, we're going to give you options. You can come into school, you can do, online learning, or you can do at your own pace online learning, which I'm not really sure what that means. But they ended up, because I live near Atlanta, and they're like, never mind. And they postponed it. They don't even start until the 8th now, and there's no there's no in-person schooling at all. They're like, forget it.
Right.
So many people are sick.
I'm at a branch campus, the liberal arts branch campus of the University of Minnesota, and we started a week early. And after we started, then the main campus announced, oh, hey, we've decided we're going to postpone it for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're not having, I think maybe next week is when their classes start. So yeah, we got pushed out in front of the mob to test the waters, and they got cold feet really fast.
Do you have plans for how you're going to teach lab online?
Yeah, well, yes. We've already done the first lab entirely online.
Okay.
And the way we did it was I went into the lab and did the experiments while video recording what I was doing.
Okay.
And this is a microscopy lab, so I got a lot of digital photographs of things,
Yeah.
and I sent those to the students along with instructions about how to calibrate. So they were learning how to use learning how to use a stage micrometer to measure things on a microscope, and we were also doing hemocytometer stuff, so cell counting. And so I showed them how to do that in video, sent them photos of sample data, and they're working on it at home now.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're still working on it, huh?
Yeah, it's not due till next week, so they're plugging away at it. Yeah, and it's in some ways it's not satisfactory because real science is so much hands-on.
Hands-on, yeah. Like my first degree was in astrophysics, and I can't imagine taking a physics lab and not being able to
interact physically.
Yeah, it's hard, but I mean, it has to be done. There's so many online learning opportunities out there, so it must be done somehow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's things like in cell biology, this is the gateway to molecular biology, and they're expected to learn how to do basic things like use a pipetteman without screwing up.
Yeah.
And how do you do that if you don't get hands-on with this $150 instrument? And yeah, we can't send them home to the students.
Right.
No.
We also can't send microscopes home with the students. That doesn't work either.
No.
So,
They get a little pricey for the university.
yes.
Right?
Yes, especially when they come back broken.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Aside from what you're dealing with your job and stuff, how has COVID kind of impacted your daily life so far?
What daily life? Yeah, starting in March we shut down and went entirely online. And at that point, I just stayed home in this space you see me in now and didn't leave it. And it was kind of, and that's been going on ever since. The only thing that's changed is this summer, as the weather got better, we could get out and start doing field work. So
that's good.
Yeah, but again, I can't do it with students. We have rules. You got to maintain social distancing with students, which means you can't have two people in a car unless they're already cross-contaminating each other like mad, like me and my wife are.
Yeah, well, at least you're able to gather that data and share it with your students and stuff. So that's something, right?
Yeah. So and it's fun too. So we go out, we drive around. We've got an eco station we went to this past weekend. We go to wetland management reserves that are scattered all around this area, and just go out and look for spiders.
Y'all do like
take pictures,
surveys and stuff, like ecological surveys on the areas, and could you do something where you did maybe just surveyed an area and then mapped your student to have to go out there the following weekend or something, and that'd be kind of cool.
We could, but I will be honest with you here. I am an amateur arachnologist at this point. I switched from working with zebrafish to working with spiders 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I am still learning. I kind of feel like a 63-year-old graduate student in a lot of ways because I got to figure all this stuff out. So we had last year we did surveys of local synanthropic populations. So we're looking at things like in garages and sheds and houses and counting spiders and assessing species and all that kind of stuff. We did that then. We can't do that this year. Yeah, no students.
Yeah.
And it was tough enough for some creepy old guy to come up and knock on your door and ask, "Could I go look in your garage for spiders?" And now we're carrying diseases maybe. So we instead what we switched to is okay, when last year I was working in these narrow niches, I was just looking at this, you know, human habitations at spiders, which greatly limits the number of species you have to worry about. And so this summer we decided around and we will identify lots and lots of spiders and just get familiar with spider diversity so that, for instance, next year when COVID's just blown away and it's all gone and we don't have to worry about it anymore, right? That's next
Sure.
year.
That's totally going to
Yeah,
happen.
No,
totally.
right?
Yes. Yeah, but then the idea is that next year we could, for instance, do our house surveys and also now branch out and pick a few other environments where we can survey spider populations there, because now I have a better grasp of what kind of species are
Mhm.
found where and work on all that stuff.
So what are you looking for out there in the wetlands? Just curious.
Well, at this point, it's just identifying different species.
Oh,
So, if you go into a house, what do you find? You find Parasteatota, you find Steatota, you find Fulcus.
yeah, lots of
So
house or
there's,
cellar spiders. Yeah.
yes, so there's about a half dozen species that are really common. And then also, in garages, you might find things like grass spiders that have crept in. Um,
Salticids.
yeah, yeah. So it's a very very restricted set of
Yeah.
species that you find. And what we're doing is we're going to, well, for example, we went to the eco station, which is this ecological thing we got for the university, and we were checking out the wetlands around the lakes,
Hmm.
but we also went walking back into the hills and looking there for what we could find. Um, we've got a couple of trips we've made to places like these wetlands management areas where it's that's just this big open space where they don't plow it every year and they're not growing crops, and you just go out there and
Yeah.
that's where you find things like our Argiope and all these great big hurricanes, great spiders and
Do they get
uh,
Dolmides up there?
Dolomites, yes,
Okay. Yeah, they get
down by
those get
the,
huge. And the wetlands be the perfect
yes,
habitat for them. So yeah.
yeah. So we've got a range of habitats we can check, like these big open grassy spaces. They're not prairie anymore, they're kind of
Yeah.
relics, but anyway, there's stuff there. We also hit up streams, we hit up lakes, we hit up ponds. uh, we've been going to various if we can call it that, urban areas in western Minnesota. They're not very urban, but locations, and just trying to get a feel for what all is there, with the idea that we could now organize a coherent project in the future where we say, okay, this stream has got all these different species, species X, Y, and Z that we're interested in. Let's go and assess them over the course of a summer, and let's come back the next year and take a look at them again.
That's very close to what I do because I work in ecosystem prediction and preservation. So we take data from ecosystems and different types of species and see how the changing climate is and will affect them, especially in terms of temperature change and precipitation change. So I don't collect the data myself. I
Uh,
print the data and do the write ups and
yeah.
stuff. But that's very close to what I do.
Yeah, so last year what we did is we sampled over the course of the summer, and we got an idea of how populations change over that 3-month period.
Mm.
And because the remaining months are kind of boring around here because everything dies, but we could look at that. So we actually have some interesting preliminary data about how they change over time. But part of the motivation, at least what I proposed to my university that I would be doing, is that I wanted to do a longitudinal study over time and ask, are these populations changing? That spiders would be a good proxy for looking at insect populations because they're top predators of insects. So we would look at that.
Mm.
Um, we haven't been able to do that, obviously. But we will resume next year. The other thing is, this is part of the story where, you've heard about the insect declines.
Yes.
And so
Or
the question is, do the spiders show similar declines? You can't show that in a single collection season. You have to go out multiple years. So that's on the list. Go do that.
Yeah, it sounds like y'all are doing very similar things with regarding that, and the stuff that she's working on involves some of the insect decline stuff as well. I've read a few papers on that. That really is kind of a mystery. It's like specifically the with the bees and the hive collapses and stuff that they've been experiencing. But
well, and also mayflies. This is the stunning one for me. Is when I first moved here, which was 20 years ago. Every summer, you'd get these huge clouds of mayflies rising off the lakes and the rivers, and they would make the news. The weatherman would be so, oh my gosh, look here, and there's this, you can just detect it with the radar, this giant huge cloud of insects rising up. And
I remember that too.
Anymore.
Yeah, I remember those events.
Yeah.
But you don't.
Well, and just the fact that we would drive around in the summer, and this was routine. You'd go for a drive, you'd come back, you have to wash the caked on bugs off of your grill. And we don't have to do that anymore. It's not an issue.
Yeah. And it's global too. I was talking to entomologist in Ecuador about a month and a half or so ago, and she was talking about the insect populations down there, and it's not just the populations; it's the diversity too that's going away. It's becoming very homogenous compared to the ways it used to be. Only one. They're competing, and only one species is able to fill this niche that humans are now so ingrained in. It's really kind of sad.
Yeah, and part of, I've spoken about how important biodiversity is and stuff like that. And I know that in terms of like climate science, we tend to put the cuter species up front, like polar bears and panda bears and stuff like that. But insect populations are really important to every ecosystem. And the fact that this is changing is a real issue and something that needs to be discussed. Although, what you mentioned about the bees, there is a big connection between climate change and what's happening with a lot of the bee population. So,
yeah, that I've seen that in my students too. That they all want to look at the charismatic species, and I think spiders are extremely charismatic, but not everyone thinks that.
No, not everybody does, unfortunately. As important as they are.
I've given a few talks here at the university to introduce students to, here's some research opportunities. And at every one of them, there's always a couple of students who do this. I've even had students turn their chair around because they just can't bear the thought of seeing a presentation with photos of spiders all over.
Do you ever bring a spider out with you when you give that presentation?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The spiders I work with are small. They're like 6 to 8 millimeters long.
Yeah.
So they're not huge. And I've got little containers I can bring, and I can pass around the containers. And if they're really good, I'll pop the lid off. You just let them run around.
Yeah.
Even though Parasteatota is venomous and can bite, I have never been bitten by one. And
every spider's venomous. And anything will bite you if you put it in a situation where that's all it can do. But my favorite spider is Cuculania hibernalis. This is such a large spider and really good looking spider too. And they were always what I would take when I would go to do presentations at elementary schools and stuff, to let the kids handle those because they're so docile. And they're they're a little bit bigger than what you see with like a Parastota or a Parastodota. I'm gonna trip over that word.
Oh, close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the species I'm mainly interested in the Theridiidae, so those are the ones I'm chasing down mostly. And This is another thing that really blew me away about working with spiders. I used to work with zebrafish, and there was one kind of zebrafish, and it's been inbred for 150 years. And so they're all kind of they're basically the next best thing to a clone of each other. And then I start working on these guys, and right here in town, there's 3 different species of these therodiidids. That I've got Peristeatoda. There may actually be 4 because there's a cryptic Peristeatoda species that you apparently can't tell apart unless you dissect its genitals, and I hate killing spiders. And then there's Steatoda borealis, which is spectacular. It's big. It's got this really shiny
false
black
widow
abdomen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like those. And then there's Steatoda triangulosa, which is just adorable because Peristeatoda has this modeling all over the place, but triangulosa has these stripes, these little triangular stripes going up its side. And as a developmental biologist, I'm kind of interested. How do you do that if you're a spider? What are the patterning mechanisms in the cuticle of a spider abdomen? And that's another one on my list of things to get to someday.
Yeah, I have a question for you, PZ. Have you ever been to Tucson?
I have, yes.
Been to the biosphere too? I'm just curious.
No.
Okay.
No, probably I was there a long time ago. I actually applied for a faculty position at.
It's my alma mater.
Yeah, they're really good on entomology.
They're good.
They were when I was
a lot of sciences. That's why I went there. But I was wondering as a biologist if you'd ever actually walked in. It's very much. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it does kind of remind me of that weird Pauly Shore movie from the 90s. But it is really cool though that they were able to create this entire, the different zones too, because you've got rainforest. Got tropical and subtropical and all of that, and it's just interesting. So the next time you are in Tucson, go see that.
Sure, I'm interested in that kind of thing, especially since that had such a catastrophically terrible ending and just didn't work. But
but they love actually talking. Like when you go through the tour, they love talking about the failure, and they're okay with it.
Yes.
They're just like,
but that's science, though. You can't count the hits and discount the misses. You got to talk about what didn't work as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things that makes me wonder how we can ever hope to go to Mars, because the biosphere, they split into camps and they hated each other, and that won't work if you're sailing off to Mars.
Yeah. Speaking of science not working, we wanted to talk about pseudoscience. I like to fight against anti-science stuff. I mean, I obviously come up a lot against climate science deniers, constantly telling me that climate change isn't real. Also in astrophysics, I come across flat earthers, which is fun. How do you deal with the anti-science crowd?
Oh, the creationists in my field,
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I deal with them? I don't know. I mean, apparently I have a reputation for being very, very patient with them.
Really?
I'm willing to talk with them for prolonged periods of time. I've gone to meetings where I get confronted by creationists, and I end up spending 2 or 3 hours arguing with them. So, that kind of. So I get this reputation as being patient, although deep down in my heart, I am just a raging flame of hate. So, it's.
I don't know if you can see in my corner, I have a sign here.
Oh, yes.
That's a kind of a in joke, because one of the first times I came up against a flat earther, I hadn't realized that we were live. I was just arguing with this guy, and he told me I was indoctrinated because I was highly educated. And I told him to suck my dick. So that's just kind of like, I don't have the patience for that. I can't I will sit here and gladly explain the science to you as best I can. But when they come back with, nope, you're just lying, or you're just a shill, it's so much.
Yes. Yeah, one of my advantages is that I've been doing this for about 40 years now.
Well, there you go.
So I'm really familiar with the arguments. There aren't that many that they make. And I've got the rebuttals right there at the tip of my forebrain or whatever. Which means I'm sitting there, and the reason I'm patient is I'm waiting for them to say the stupid thing I know they're going to say.
Yeah.
And then I'll slam them with my answer. Mm-hmm. Not that it will penetrate them. It bounces right off of them. But I'm pretty comfortable with dealing with anything they bring up. I haven't had to deal with flat earthers yet, fortunately.
No, flat earthers are so hard to deal with. Do you find that it's actually gotten worse in the past like 20 years or so because of the internet and the fact that people can access this sort of pseudoscience bullshit so easily that more people are kind of glomming onto these ideas?
Sort of, and sort of not. I mean, creationism, I think, is fading. That's my feeling, is that I'm not seeing as much creationism, and I think a lot of people are now equipped to deal with creationist arguments. It's all the other stuff that's starting to rise up and bite us in the butt. That's really
anti-vaxxers. Yeah.
Anti-vaxxers, yes. Conspiracy theorists of various kinds. I said I've been doing this for 40 years. 40 years ago, we never had flat earthers. I mean, I'm sure they were scattered around, but we never had to deal with that kind of nonsense. Not even 20 years ago, there wasn't much of that going around. But now you get the anti-vaxxers. They're pretty prominent. You get now it's QAnon. Oh man.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Impenetrable idiots right there. Yeah. Yeah.
And
the
deep into that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also been another shift, which is, years ago when we were dealing with this, we would often have to say, this is apolitical, that there's left-wing nutcases, and they tended to go for things like homeopathy and astrology and all that kind of stuff. And then the right-wingers were gravitating towards creationism and that kind of thing.
More religion on that side.
Yeah, driven by religion in that case.
And then woo on the other side, yeah.
Yeah, but the way I feel about it now is that the woo is fading because it's being dominated by political concerns. Mm-hmm. And that right now, I would say the biggest danger is not some crystal healing goofball who believes in astrology. It's the right-wing fanatic. And people may hate you for allowing me to say this, but I think there really is a very sharp political divide at this point.
Oh, there absolutely is.
It's prevalent.
And a lot of stuff is very dangerous too. It scares me.
Yes, that's the thing. The crystal healing astrologer, she's just gonna babble, say goofy stuff.
Take your money, maybe.
Yeah, try and take your money. Sell you a quack medicine, which is terrible.
That's dangerous, but yeah.
Yes, that can do no harm.
When I was getting my physics degree, I had an aunt that was confused and kept telling people I was getting my degree in astrology, and it drove me insane. It's like, no. Anyway.
Oh, so can you tell what sign I am?
It said it's total, like, people would ask me, you study the stars, so you must believe in astrology. I'm like, no, it's complete bullshit. Please don't listen to that stuff.
Yes. Yeah, but they're mostly harmless, I think. I mean,
in
a general sense.
They don't have the clout behind them because the Republican Party is bought and paid for by evangelicals. It's really in their pocket, and it's obvious at this point with some of the archaic laws and ordinances and stuff that we have in place in the U.S. that it's bizarre that these things are still allowed in the 21st century.
Right. Yeah. And then on top of that, there's another front where I have to deal with them fairly frequently, and that is the far right wing nitwit who insists that there are only two genders.
Oh, God damn it. I'm so.
And and the worst part of it is that they then announce to you that, well, that's what biology says, and if you disagree, you are disagreeing with biology. And I just want to scream at them. No, biology is saying exactly the opposite. It's saying there's a continuum of gender and also a complex arrangement of sexes as well. So it's, you know, they were putting on the mantle of biology to say things that biologists disagree with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
So your schools in the Midwest that you work at, so you see a lot of these people coming in from these small town schools, very religious backgrounds. Do you get a lot of resistance from your students?
No, not at all. Well, the thing is, my university has sort of set itself up as the elite liberal arts college,
Uh,
you know, fairly high admission standards, and also with a known reputation for, being very socially progressive and all this kind of stuff. We for instance, a couple of years ago, we got the entire region inflamed because our student body elected a man to be the homecoming queen. Something simple, trivial, like no big deal here.
Yeah.
But that means that all these other high schools around here think of us as the queer college, and so they don't come here, which
Good.
I can't say that I feel bad about.
Right?
Yeah.
If they did
Yeah.
here, they would burn it to the ground. Like, I live in the South. Not,
Oh,
I'm not from here, but it's not great. It's very. There's a lot of Confederate flags. There's a lot of hate speech. It's just not wonderful. So I can't imagine what would happen if something like that happened here. It's just
oh.
yeah, she's in the
It-
deep
it-
south.
Yeah.
I don't like
It's
this.
actually been kind of instructive because we do get a few very, very conservative students. They do come in because you can be really conservative and still be really smart, right? And
Yeah.
they are. They get in. Um, and for instance, 2 years ago, there was a big kerfuffle because the local Republican group started putting up signs all over the buildings saying there are only two genders and all, that kind of stuff.
Why
And
does it even matter to them though? Like, why is this an argument with them if they're not even participating in it? They have nothing.
yeah,
They don't want anything to do with anybody on the LGBTQ spectrum whatsoever. So why the fuck do they have to speak out against it? I don't understand.
I think they saw it partly as a vehicle to get attention.
Yeah.
Well,
So, like I said, they're a minority here, tiny minority. So they do this stuff, get things, the school paper gets full of op-eds and students writing in, and the campus forum online is full of it. But the thing is, they made absolutely no headway because to the man and woman and everything in between, the entire biology faculty got up and said, "No, that's nonsense. That's just not true." And they started writing op-eds and we put up signs of our own to counter them. And I think pretty quickly they realized that this was not an environment where their brand of reactionary BS was going to get much headway.
Yeah.
it-
And
good.
if anything, it's sort of fired up the other side. So, we have a really active LGBTQ group, multiple LGBTQ groups. It gave them something to push back against, which was frustrating for them, I'm sure, but also, gets them worked up.
gives them a chance
And
to
motivated.
teach too. To lay
Yeah.
out some science for people who don't understand what's going on with what the difference between gender really is, because a lot of people just think it's about what you got between your legs, and there's a lot more to it than that.
Start the discussion with there's a difference between sex and gender, and then you move on from there. But
Yeah.
a lot of times they won't even take that starting point. It's just, this is what I've heard, and therefore it is what it is. It's very
And I teach courses in developmental biology and genetics, and I always touch on this issue and explain to them that the pathway to a sex is really complicated. There's multiple layers of this, and it's not like everything is in lockstep. It's really easy for intermediate steps to go in a slightly different direction, and for you to end up with an individual who's not canonically male or female as they think of it, and that there's really interesting things going on. And then also, there's this thing called a brain up here that is, oh man, you can't just simply say that if you inherit a Y chromosome, your brain works in one particular way.
Yeah, I've read a lot of studies about it and how the brain will actually be more like the gender that the trans person feels, because the brain's different between go with two. Obviously, like you said, it's more complicated than that. But if we're going to put just two sexes down, I've read a lot of studies about how the brain will react more as the gender that they feel that they are than the gender that they were born, or the sex that they were born with. So
that's the thing. Yeah, we can put it. They can test this and show that what these conservative, I don't know what the cranks are saying is wrong scientifically. It's wrong.
Perfs.
Yeah,
sure.
And I can throw all these papers from Science and Nature and developmental biology and all these big name journals, very prestigious journals and authors, and they all disagree with these guys, and these guys still insist that they're right, and that they have the proper understanding of biology, which just, how do you get in? It's like, I would not go to Amanda and say, oh, I have decided how astronomy works.
Right.
Yes.
Well, they do.
Please pay attention to me.
The younger creationists do. I've had that debate with them. I've had the debate about the red shift and why that shows it. And no, it's in the Bible. It can't be wrong. So.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
that's a common ploy. They have their own source of authority. Yeah. And it's not
it's not scientific in the least. The Bible really isn't. Yeah. But no matter how many times you try to explain it to them, that doesn't work. I would say, as a biologist, you must come across people that are against the idea of evolution a lot.
Oh yes.
How does that work out?
I've noticed when I look at flat earthers online that a lot of them are anti-evolution as well.
Yeah.
It's like this generic denialism that they've adopted towards all scientific views.
Yeah, they tend to conspiracy theory they believe in, and then they just seem to believe them all, or a lot of them. It's weird.
Yeah, conspiracy theory plus religious belief. It's a terrible combination. But yeah, a lot of people who disagree with evolution, and it's,
well, religion kind of cultivates that mindset that makes you susceptible. That makes you susceptible to some of the conspiracy theories, like QAnon stuff. There's some correlation there. It really does encourage you to, if you don't like what the science is showing, then you don't have to accept it. And there's nothing that could just set up that block in your mind and. And
and I think that's key too. It's, if you don't like it, you don't believe it, right?
How do you deal with people who come to you and say, "Well, it's just a theory"?
Oh,
I love that one. It's my favorite.
I agree with them, and then I explain to them that a theory is really a powerful thing that's been thoroughly tested and is pretty powerful. So, yeah, I'm not offended if you call it a theory. What do you think you're saying if you call it a theory?
Yeah, I always come back with, well, that gravity is a theory, right?
Right.
But when you're talking to a flat earther, they don't believe in that either.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, it used to be I could come back and say, well, germ theory is theory too, but nowadays there's too many of them that don't believe in that.
No, that the politicization, that's a weird word, of what has happened with the virus. My son mentioned something to me the other day, and he said it's really weird that we seem to be the only country in the world that has made this disease about politics, and we've divided our country over it. It's kind of ridiculous that at this point in time, the right is so ready to just throw away all real science in order to follow their own rhetoric. It's scary. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, I was reading something by Amanda Marcotte just today about this, where she made the point that the problem is that Trump and his cronies have gone so far off the deep end that the people who voted for them and support them don't have a way back. They don't have a graceful explanation where they can say, "Oh, I didn't realize that about him. Now I'll disagree with him because I've learned about this thing that he has or whatever." And unfortunately, what's happened is that we've gotten to the point where he is so far out there that there's no exit. There's nothing where you can say, yeah, he's finally said this thing that breaks my faith in him, and therefore I'll start walking it back, because he telegraphed all this stuff right from the beginning, right? He was pushing this right from the beginning, and the Republican Party in general has been doing this. So now they're out there in the middle of the QAnon ocean,
Oh God.
and their boat is sinking,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have a way to say, okay, if you come help me, I will gladly go back to shore with you.
Yeah.
Uh,
So what do we do if, like, say Trump gets reelected and we still have McConnell and all of these, we have the balance of power is toward the GOP. How do we, how are we able to express our science and be able to fight any of this if they're so against actual science?
oh, well,
Posing the
if
big
if
questions,
they get,
Manda.
yeah, the way I feel about it is, if this group gets reelected, if we don't get these Republicans out of the Senate and the presidency, we are just simply screwed. They won't be supporting science. I mentioned earlier about how, oh, we'll be fine next summer. We've got the vaccine and everyone has controlled the frequency of the virus. The thing is, that may not happen, and then what do? Well, we get the disease and we die.
I mean,
A
I know
large
it's not
number.
your field, PZ, but what Trump has done to climate science is horrible. There's over 100 laws and regulations that he's rolled back, environmental regulations that he's rolled back. He took us out of Paris, which I could talk about that. It doesn't matter. But I mean, he is clearly in the pocket of big oil and is doing everything he can to chip away at the progress we've made toward fighting climate change and toward just making our just country a healthier place. He has done so much, and I'm afraid that's my biggest fear, for him to be reelected, what he's going to do with what's left of the environmental regulations in our country,
Yeah.
like EPA. So
Yes, if he's reelected, it's not just regulations. The Supreme Court will be packed with
oh yeah,
plenty of
And those are
loves
lifetime
his judges
positions.
in. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah.
I just said those are lifetime positions too. When you get in the Supreme Court, we'll be dealing with that for the next 30 years.
Kavanaugh is going to be in the Supreme Court for the rest of his life. Holy shit.
Yeah.
It's like a different world. How did this happen? You know?
Well, I would guess that I can say a little bit about how it happened, because it's what the creationists did.
Yeah.
So for a long time, the creationists focused on the grassroots. Just, oh, school boards. Let's go pack the school boards. Let's pack the local judiciary. Let's pack up The city councils, fill those with our people, and they're still doing that.
You know,
And
I would
that's a
say,
powerful way to approach it. Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I would say that honestly, communist Russia was a lot to blame too, because the godless commies. So that gave the Americans this push to
Fight against
yeah, to
terrorism.
have to rise
Yeah.
up with the religiosity. That's when we added, in God we trust on our money, and inserted that into the Pledge of Allegiance. That really gave the evangelical movement its push to, because we had an enemy. We had somebody who was godless that they could point to and say, that's atheism over there. We worship God over here, and who would rise up and speak against that
Yeah.
at that point in time?
And also, there's also the social attitude that, I suspect that the Red Scare also pushed us more extremely towards the old ideal of rugged individualism rather than working together as a community and cooperation.
Because that's socialism.
Yeah, I know. Just the fact that people think socialism is some bloody horror that's coming down the pike. It's not. It's
Well, and anything that you don't like where people work together is just socialism anymore. It's just you offer.
Hear how they push it, because I have, I take care of my elderly parents and they watch Fox News constantly. And they must say the radical leftist socialists like 1,000 times a day. They really drill it into your head that we are anarchists trying to tear this country apart. They really do. And it's insane because it's just not true.
Yeah, so those people did the potent thing of going for the grassroots and getting in at a low level, which allows them to dominate upper levels. But then also what you mentioned, media. They have been so good at dominating the media. Clear Channel, Rupert Murdoch, all that stuff.
Oh God, we were talking about Murdoch earlier today. He just has his hands everywhere. He really does, and it's scary. I blame him and Roger Ailes really for a big reason why Trump got elected. They pushed that shit. They wanted him in office.
Yes, we still have all these talk radio stations out here, which are just a toxin on the country. Rush Limbaugh and that kind of thing.
Alex Jones.
Getting the Congressional Medal of Honor for that, too.
That was gross. That was so gross. Like, nobody can ever be proud of getting that medal anymore after he got it.
No.
So, it's sad.
Yeah.
I'm not proud to be an American at this moment. I'm just not.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they will use that against us too, to say we're un-American. I'm sure we share a lot of ideals that are being, contradicted by the right wing right now. And I would love to love America again, but I can't love a right wing America.
I don't think it makes us un-American when we look at a country that we're proud of and see it falling apart and are upset about it. We see what he's done.
And want to change it, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make us un-American. I think that makes us more American than them, who's able to just toss out what our country stands for and be greedy and do what they want. So that's my opinion.
And that's what it is.
Bumper sticker patriotism.
Yeah.
That's in this whole. That's what they sell is patriotism up front, but it's all about money on the back end. It's about oil lobby. It's about big pharma lobby. It's really built on that. The patriotism.
It's nationalism, and there's a big difference there.
Yeah,
and it's
that's true too. Yeah.
They say it's patriotism. That's all.
Well, it's hand in hand with the religion. It's God and country is the way that they're looking at it, or the way that it's being sold to them, and they're eating it up. But it's on the backside, it's the oil industry and pharmaceutical companies and lobbyists and
the the big oil is the biggest lobbyist that we have, and they are fucking everything up really bad. And it's so heartbreaking to see that this kind of, like, in 2020, this rhetoric that climate change isn't real or climate change isn't man-made when it's clearly, been proven by countless scientists in my field. And we've tried very hard to just say, look, we need to change things. But to have people like the oil lobby push this rhetoric around to say, no, it's a lie, but and end up just polluting the earth. Even if we were wrong, what's the harm in us saving the fucking planet? I don't get it. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that was always, and we talked about that in a show that we did together, a panel we did together a couple weeks ago about the inconvenient truth creating this kind of being like a net negative for the climate change awareness and moving to greener energy, because it put basically expiration dates on things and said this is going to happen by this date, and that's really not a good approach.
Over with that one, he really did.
Yeah, which means that every time we succeed at something and push that date back, then the other side will see it as, oh, you're wrong.
Yeah. See, you said this was going to happen then. It didn't, so you're wrong. And it creates this confusion, so I don't know.
But, if you look at the rest of the world, there are countries that are moving to a very, very green platform. China is really a lot greener than the U.S. At the very least. I know they've got with the floating islands of solar panels powering cities and stuff. It's quite impressive.
Italy has a lot of very innovative alternative energy technologies that are coming out, as is a lot of the Nordic countries. It's, everybody else is participating and deciding, yes, this is a thing, we should do it. Everybody else is in the Paris Climate Accord. I think actually one or two might have left too, but most everybody else agrees that this is a problem. And I've said this a million times. Sorry that I took this to climate change, but I've said this a million times. We cannot solve this problem as individual countries. We need to do this globally. And the fact that America, the most powerful country in the world, supposedly the richest, not really, whatever, but most powerful, is scoffing at it and saying, fuck it, we don't care, we're just going to burn more fossil fuels. It's not good. It really isn't. So
right. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's all tied together. It's the same group of people that are pushing climate change is not real. They'll say evolution's not real. That vaccines don't work. It's not all of them necessarily will believe all of these things, but they kind of stick their hand in the bag and grab a handful of which fields of science that they're going to be in denial of, and just kind of run with it.
PZ, what type of science denial do you find to be the most dangerous?
Oh, most dangerous.
Yeah.
I've got to rank them?
A couple, I guess. You don't have to rank them.
Let's see. What am I most concerned? Well, yeah, I'd have to agree with you that right now climate change is the number one problem that we've got to deal with that. In the United States, I would say another huge problem that we haven't mentioned yet is biological misinterpretations of race.
Yes.
And gender.
Mm-hmm.
That this is the sad thing. Here I am, a biologist, and biology has this incredibly unsavory history of endorsing the worst ideas. Eugenics was one. And we still have all these biologists who endorse that idea. They just don't call it eugenics anymore.
Really?
But they're just doing the same old thing.
Do they have a name for it, or are they just still pushing those kind of ideas?
Have you heard of human biodiversity?
Yes, I have. I haven't actually looked into it, but I've heard the term.
It sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does, especially if someone like me, talks about how biodiversity is so important. So
yes, but really what it is closet racism.
So they're trying to use science.
It's supporting the idea of ethno-nationalism and keep opposing miscegenation and kicking brown people out of white countries and vice versa. Well, not so much vice versa, but mainly, yeah.
Yeah.
That there's, uh, so it's a very racist policy, and it's been supported for a long time by people like James Watson, who we all know is a flaming racist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to actually a debate just the other day where someone was taking the position of about the IQ gap, the alleged IQ gap between. It's like you cannot base someone's IQ on how close their ancestors lived to the equator. It's not. That's not the way.
Right.
IQ is kind of bullshit anyway. I mean,
I've actually seen recently somebody on Quillette talking about the people of sub-Saharan Africa having an average IQ of 70, which is just absurd. Yeah.
Okay. And there's something to be said about being in a underprivileged country that drops the IQ levels down, but that works in the U.S. as well. They have to every few decades they have to move that bar up because as the country develops and has more access to education, the higher they score on the test. It's not necessarily anything biological; it's environmental. I mean.
Yeah, and a lot of it, though, is also based on bad historical evidence. Like, whenever you hear somebody say this country has an average IQ of 70, it's not based on contemporary tests of the intelligence of the population.
Huh, really?
No, it's all ancient history. It's people digging up, things from the era of eugenics, the 1930s, for instance, and then just saying, well, it's extrapolating to now. This is the way it is. It's just all garbage science, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
No.
Can't turn over a rock without running into it.
Yeah. And the other thing is these people are really ferocious on the internet. You must have encountered this sort of thing where, an anti-vaxxer or an HBD person or something.
No, never. On the internet, you say?
Yes, it's this weird thing that you type on and
you argue with people on. Yeah.
Well, there's not much arguing I can do when somebody writes to me and says, because you don't believe in the bell curve and races, you must be an evolution denier. Telling me I'm an evolution denier, which...
Wow.
Okay.
Bold.
When someone says something like that to you, do you ever ask them to define what evolution means?
Yeah.
Oh, at that point, it's just, boom, cut off the conversation.
I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about this. They were having an argument with someone, and they brought up a conspiracy theory. And they continued the argument. I was like, why? Once you get to the point where they say that they believe in some conspiracy theory, I'm out. I'm done. I'm not doing this shit anymore because it's not worth it. I want to educate. Like, for example, my son will come to me. He's 16. And he will come to me with something that he's seen online that is some kind of weird conspiracy, something fringe, and he wants to learn about it. And that obviously it's not, I want to help educate him and explain where it's wrong and whatnot. And sometimes I will talk about different sciences on my channel in order to do that, to educate the people that aren't convinced or need to learn about it. But the people that are actually full in on it, like tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory bullshit, there really is no convincing them. There isn't. I've tried, and it's pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also tend to shut off conversations when the other person announces something defamatory about other people. That if they announce, "Oh, gays, they're all perverts," and should be put to death. Well, we're done.
Yeah.
I don't need to talk to this person anymore. You've laid yourself out in a position, and if I were the kind of person who would punch someone in the face, that's what I would respond with.
I think it depends a lot of times for me personally on what kind of audience we're looking at. If there's enough people there listening to what that individual's saying, and I have science to back up what I'm saying, if I have research that's peer reviewed to back up the counter to it, I might engage for a little bit just to make sure that the people watching it are aware that he didn't shut this down. He didn't say, this is fact, and that was the end of the conversation, and walk away thinking that this is the truth. I want to be able to say, well, what he's saying is refuted by all this research and data here. Do with it what you will. Present that, at least present something so that the people following up on that might have a chance to learn.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a tough decision to make, though, especially if you're in the middle of a debate or something and the other person shows his hind end and it's just horrible, awful, gross stuff where he's just pandering bigotry.
Yeah.
And
there's got to be a line.
Yeah, you've invested all this time and preparation, and maybe you're going strong and making great arguments, and then they do this, and
it's just about trying to get those who might not totally understand it. But I had a friend who asked me, I had a really good friend of mine who had a flat earther as a friend. He was like, I would like you to just come on and talk to him because you'll be nice. And I'm like, I don't know why he thought I'd be nice. I have a tendency to be a little belligerent, as you can see. But it was like 2 hours of explaining the science as simply and as matter-of-factly as I could, but everything came to a wall where it was just, I don't believe you. That's it. Just, I don't believe that. This is what I believe because I read it somewhere online.
Yes. Or they start trotting out really bad science. And
science,
saying, yeah, that kind of science. And then you become dueling authorities, and you say, well, I'm a professor of biology. I know X, Y, and Z, and this is false. And they're up there saying, well, I'm a minister at a church, and I say X. And unfortunately, with many audiences, the other guy wins in that kind of debate.
I know there's nothing you can do about it, but hopefully, like I said, you can at least change some people's minds or get them to understand more that don't totally understand the topic and are leaning either way. But the people themselves that fully believe in the conspiracy theory, it is pointless, totally pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta remember who you're talking to.
I would even say that religion is a kind of conspiracy theory because it gets deployed in the same way.
It really does,
Yeah.
And it has the utter fact that, in order to fully believe in Christianity or any of the Abrahamic religions, you have to believe in what the Bible says. Therefore, you can't really believe in science. And there are plenty of Christians that accept science. They do. And you can talk to them and they don't believe in like the flood and they believe in evolution. Plenty of them like that. But it's that faction, especially the evangelicals and the creationists, that just absolutely think that the Bible is a science book and real science is wrong. It's heartbreaking. It really is. There's no coming together in terms of that side and real science. There's just not.
Fortunately, that's the people are leaving those churches every year. Just the numbers are just plummeting. So hopefully we won't have to deal with it too much longer.
Oh, but the ones who are left are hardcore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they teach their kids this. I hate indoctrination. I didn't even tell my kid I was an atheist. I taught him about all the religions and let him decide for himself. I think it's awful forcing each generation to believe what the last believed. It's bullshit. Yeah. So, and it just perpetuates this idiocy, really.
I didn't go quite that far. My kids knew I was an atheist. It was hard to avoid discovering I was an atheist. But yeah, I went out of my way to tell them, if you want to go to church, go ahead. If you want to believe, I'm not going to disown you for that or anything ridiculous like that. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. My mother tried. My mother is Catholic, so she tried bringing him to church when he was really little. It did not go over well. So,
Were you brought up
know.
religious, PZ?
yeah.
No, it's okay, 50s and 60s, right? Long, long ago, where it was just kind of taken for granted that you would go to church on Sundays or whatever.
Mhm.
And yeah, I went to Sunday school and I went to church, but my parents weren't big on religion. I think it was more because they had 6 kids and they needed to get us out for a little while. But yeah, so it's like, oh, Sunday morning, I get to go hang out with Fred and Kathy, my
Yeah.
friends at Sunday school.
That's how I explain Connecticut, because like there were churches, people went to church. Nobody really actually, like, there wasn't nobody truly believed and really into it. I think it was just habit. And Sunday school was just like, here's a coloring book, draw pictures or color pictures of Noah. Like, they didn't actually teach us anything. So it's very blasé compared to here in Georgia, where there is a church like every fucking 20 feet, and they're really, really into it. And they spend Sunday is the best day to go out in this town because nobody is around. Everybody's in church. So you can get whatever you want done and not have to deal with anybody. But it is a big deal here. So just not used to it.
Well, yeah, it's not just the South. Up here in rural Minnesota, this is a town of 5,000. We have 16 or 17 churches. So
that's like the town that I grew up in, and just about the same size, just about the same amount of churches. The Midwest is almost as bad as the South in some ways. Plus, we have in this area anyway, we have a lot of like Mormon churches and stuff too. So there's probably a little bit more variety up here than you experience in Georgia. But you might have some.
Yeah, these are all Christian churches. There's no synagogue. There's no mosques. There's nothing.
They actually, in my town, they were trying to get a mosque here so that the Islamic people could bury their dead, and they fought against it. I protested with them because I believe everybody has the right to believe what they want, and they just wanted their mosque so they had a place, and people came out in force against them in this town. It was hardcore, and they didn't get it. No mosque in my town, so
yeah. So nobody's even tried here. I mean, there's only a couple of Jewish families here and a couple of Muslim families. So it's, they would rather drive to the Twin Cities or something for that instead.
Yeah.
Instead, what we've got a half a dozen different Lutheran sects who hate each other and would never overlap with each other.
It's just weird. It is so weird to me how, like, I was raised Irish Catholic, and then I come into this community and everybody tells me that Christians don't think Catholics are really Christians. I'm like, okay, like, why do they all fight? You believe in the same shit pretty much, but
it's the same Christ.
Yeah.
Yes. Hell,
supposedly.
It's the same God for all three. So why not just like each other and get along, for fuck's sake? Yeah. It's not that hard.
Well, we can get along too. I'm okay with making an effort to get along with the religious people, and I'm not telling them they can't have their beliefs. Your beliefs are fine. Let's not use them in our in politics. Let's not insert them into my children's education. That's always been a big one for me. Is my son's in high school biology teachers told him, he's like or I guess I should say she's like, the only other animal that walks on water besides the basilisk lizard was Jesus. And I'm like, you can't be telling my kid that. I mean, he's in high school. Obviously he's old enough to know that people that it's a story, but other people might be more susceptible.
My son would
just have to bring a water strider into class, right?
Yeah, right.
Your teacher is wrong. Proof.
My son would get pamphlets for like, Christian camps and stuff. They would hand them out at church. And I was like, no, that's not okay. Plus, a lot of his teachers end up saying, stuff like that, or just generally, the Lord bless you or something. Just please don't bring that into the schools. Just don't. You don't need to. There's no reason for it. But it
Yeah.
happened here. Luckily, by the time we had moved here, Angel was very strong in his secularism and was into being an atheist and fought against it and wasn't able. It's not like they were gonna sway him or anything. It still pissed me off though. So
Yeah. Yeah, now here at the high school, I think it's changed. I think it's gotten better. But several years ago, we had two biology teachers, and one of them was an outright creationist who just
oh
declared it in class. And it kind of split the community because, all the faculty tried to get their kids into the other biology teacher. So just to make sure that crossover didn't occur. So we had a lot of that happening. But my daughter, for instance, was the big fight wasn't over evolution and creationism in the high school. It was over lesbian and gay rights. And the school was just, they were awful about it. And there were kids who were wearing these defamatory T-shirts to school, and the school wouldn't do a thing about it. And, yeah.
Well,
yeah. Can I ask how long ago that was when your daughter was in high school?
My daughter is currently a graduate student, so this would have been 8 or 9 years ago,
That's
maybe.
not that long ago. That's
No, and it's still a problem here in town.
I live in Illinois now, but I lived in Missouri before, and they have different ordinances on their education and what's required on the curriculum. And they recently, I remember it's been a couple of years back, that they don't have to include certain things in sex ed classes anymore over there. So I actually got a more comprehensive sex ed class when I went to school in the 90s than my kids did. Just, well, I only had one that's been old enough to take that class, but a couple of years ago, it was very just brushing over things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Well, when I went to high school, that was in the 70s, and I surprise people when I tell them I never got a class or anything taught about evolution in public schools. I never got sex ed. It was, they weren't teaching creationism. Instead, what they would do is just quietly forgetting about this topic.
Jesus.
Not bringing it up.
Entire branches of science that you didn't learn about till college, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of nuts.
Well, I heard about them because I would go to the library and sneak around behind the teacher's back and read all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that was in Seattle, which is
really
progressive.